The Spanish Inquisition. Prior to the Spanish Inquisition, Spain had been exchanged back and forth between um, Muslim rulers and Christian rulers. The Muslims had arrived in the 700s, and by the 1100s had most of Spain. And then from the 1100s to the 1400s, there was the reconquest back by the Christian rulers, um, such that in 1492 the only Muslim state left was Granada down here. um, and during this time, there was the Inquisition taking place. Basically, when Spain had come under Muslim control, many of the people had converted to Islam. It wasn't forced. You didn't have to become a Muslim, but you could choose to voluntarily convert because it's good for business, because you are genuinely convinced of the truth of Islam, because your family members are converting or whatever. And so people had converted to Islam from Christianity. When the line came back down with these cities that had been Muslim turning back into Christian cities, again, it was voluntary conversion. Nobody's forcing you to convert, but if you wish to convert from Judaism or Islam to Christianity, it's possible to do that. A lot of people felt like it was good for business, and so they would go ahead and convert. Each time, certain people would convert in name only, and then they would continue to do their practices. So they would convert to Islam, and they would turn up in the mosque on Friday, but then Sunday morning they would be doing home prayers to Jesus. And it was the same thing. They were when they were Muslims converting to Christianity, they would turn up in church on Sunday morning, but then they'd continue to pray 5 times a day, or they would meet on Friday evening for the Shabbat dinner if they were Jews. They were, they were just pretending to be Christians, and so the Inquisition was there to root out all of those fake Christians and kill them, which is I guess the prerogative of the king, or the king and the queen. Ferdinand and Isabella were doing this. Ferdinand in Aragon, and Isabella in Castile, I believe. In any case, once they unite the crown, then they turn the Inquisition not only against Christians but against everyone. So Jews and Muslims too are forced to convert. This was something completely radical for the entire country to do this. Prior to that, maybe a lord here, the boss of this city or that city would say, "Oh, everyone has to convert," but it was never widespread or sustained. This happened, boom, it's over. If you want to stay in Spain, you either become a Christian or you leave. You become a Christian or you die. The only other option is to leave. And so at that point, loads of people leave Spain. They send in, they become refugees. Let's see, Bayezid II is the Ottoman Empire emperor, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. The Alhambra decree is what extends the Spanish Inquisition to Jews and Muslims. Bayezid II sends his entire Ottoman navy out to rescue the refugees. He granted them permission to settle in the Ottoman Empire. He ridiculed the conduct of Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. In expelling a class of people so useful to their subjects, you venture to call Ferdinand a wise ruler. He said to his courtiers, "He who has impoverished his own country and enriched mine." And this happened to the United States as well in the 1930s when Hitler was kicking out Jewish people or oppressing them in Germany, and America said, "Hey, you don't like Albert Einstein? You think he's Jewish and therefore undesirable? Yeah, I'll bring him over here. We love him." Okay, and America has been greatly enriched by German racism in the same way that the Ottoman Empire was greatly enriched by Spanish bigotry, religious bigotry here. Um, and so basically what happened was that everyone was looking on Spain during this time and saying, "Look, the Jews and the Muslims are skilled craftsmen. They are highly successful business owners. They are administrators. They're educated people. They're academics. They're scholars. They're engineers. This is crazy. You're destroying your country." in 50 years or 100 years, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to be even more miserable and poor than you already are. Um, and this is what happened in Cambodia. If you have any knowledge about Cambodia, um, during the Pol Pot regime, during the Khmer Rouge running Cambodia, it was communists who felt that the true citizen is the farmer, and so everyone with a college degree basically is now persona non grata. You got to go to the country and live, dig in the mud, and get shot at some point. They killed something like 20% of the population, 30%, something ridiculous. How many people were killed, and the ones who were killed were everyone with a college degree. Air traffic controllers and engineers who run public water systems, and doctors and lawyers and everyone. And what's going to happen to this poor country in 50 years? Are they even going to be halfway back to where they were in 1970? After this terrible disaster, and everyone looking on just says, "No way, Spain is just sunk." But the third major thing that happened prevented that. So everyone else is looking on and saying this is just a mess. But the third major thing was discovering the New World, and so instead of Spain being even more poor and backward in 1592 than it was in 1492, it actually became the most powerful country in the world. The same thing would be the case if in 1975 we see where Honduras and um, Cambodia are, and in 2075 everyone from New York and Tokyo and London and Paris are all going around to the capital of Honduras and the capital of Cambodia, hat in hand, saying, "Please, please, please give us money. Thank you so much. We really, really love you." And that is what happened. That's what happened to Western Europe. Western Europe took over the entire world in the following 100 years, so that by 1592 they were on their way to global conquest. And 300 years later, it was all over. So, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. In the years that followed Columbus's discovery of the New World, three things happened. Number one, death. Massive numbers of Indians died from the disease, leaving entire towns and regions deserted for the taking by the Europeans. They saw this as divine provision. God had given them these empty houses with their full fields. And it continued a support for manifest destiny in the 19th century, where America seems to be, white Americans seem to have been given as their God-given right all lands that formerly belonged to Native Americans. Number two, war. Indians who did not die of disease were faced with old world weapons that various armies in Europe had been developing for centuries. Europeans weren't very good at very much, but they were good at the military hardware. They kept building because there was so much anarchy going on in Europe. You have and warfare throughout 1300s to 1600s. You have steadily increasing cannon power and to blast through steadily increasing wall thickness of their castles. So they just got more and more highly developed military hardware, and then they unleashed it on the Native American states and were decisive. Number three was inflation, and this is the key. Inflation. While the supply of precious metals in Europe and the Mediterranean had been mostly static for centuries, suddenly the Spanish had tons and tons of new gold and especially silver that they could spend on weapons. The problem was to transfer the precious metal safety to Europe, which demanded naval dominance. So you've got all of this silver down in, you're taking it out of the mines in Bolivia. Back out a bit. And you're trying to get it up to Spain. It's coming out of here, and then you're getting it up there, and it's hard to do. The problem with leaving it here is that you can't really buy anything because there's no valuable goods being produced, in the same way that there is in China, and so you have to bring it up here so that you can plug it into these networks and get stuff. And to get it across the Atlantic is hard because there are French and Dutch and British and Danish and Swedish and Italian, etc. ships poised to prey on you. So the English defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 is thus important because it established England as a major player in the New World by virtue of its navy. The new gold and silver supply made Spain the richest country in Europe in the 1600s and 1700s and funded many wars against the Ottoman Turkish Empire, which was the most powerful military force in the Mediterranean at the time. It also drove major investments all over Europe as the plunder of Spain was shared across the region, inflating the European economy with regard to the rest of the world and driving down the value of others, particularly the Ottomans. Those are their enemies, their investment in precious metals. So it becomes more and more expensive for the Ottomans to continue to dominate the Mediterranean the way they have been for centuries at this time. At least a century. 1400s is when they took over. Okay.